Hi, Deacon Ed McCormick here, and today I want to talk to you about family, friends, and the parable of the prodigal son. And I want to start out by referencing a comment a friend of mine once made to me. He's a trust and estates lawyer who deals with conflicts between family members, usually in their 70s, as they're trying to battle out who gets mom and dad's money from the trust or the estate. And he said to me, I'm really dealing with fights that go back to when these people were 6 or 7 or 8 or 10. And they're holding on to grudges and bitterness and mistreatment that happened years ago, but they've held on to them their whole lives. You know, and there's wonderful things about family and friendships. So many beautiful things, but there are also conflicts. There's also jealousy and envy, cruelty. People mistreat each other. Parents and kids mistreat each other. Brothers and sisters mistreat each other, and sometimes in terrible ways. And there are conflicts and factions. Folks sometimes don't talk to family members for ages and ages. And this is part of our life. And into this, we hear the parable of the prodigal son, where this young man asks his father for his half of the inheritance. And then the son goes off and wastes all of it. Now, I want to point out that when the son asks the father in the parable for his half of the inheritance, he's in effect saying to the father, I'm treating you as dead. Because you don't get an inheritance until someone has died. And so he's treating his father, who's alive, as if he's dead. He squanders all his money and is so desperate he even wants to eat the food of the pigs. And for a Jewish audience that Jesus is speaking to, there can be nothing more offensive. And out of desperation, the guy comes to his senses and decides he's going to go home to his father and beg him to be treated like one of his servants. And instead, the father engages in these outrageous gestures. He runs out to receive the son, and no ancient father, no head of an ancient family or clan or tribe runs. People come to them, but this guy runs out. He gives him a ring and he gives him the cloak and kills the fatted calf, and there's a great celebration. And then we know that the older brother is indignant about all this. Now, to understand this parable and what it means for the conflicts in our lives, I want to make reference to a line in St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 5, where he says, anyone who is in Christ is a new creation. The old things have passed away. New things are coming. You see, Paul thinks with the death and resurrection of Jesus, the decisive moment in human history has come. And the old world, the present age, is ending. And Christ is ushering in a new world and a new way of living. And I think this parable of the prodigal son gets at that. Here's the old way of living. The father could have adopted the old way of living, which would have been to shun the son, to say, you consider me dead, I consider you dead. And when this son came back, he would have thrown him out, disowned him, maybe even had him stoned. He would have agreed with the older son. And we know that the old way of living is violence and vengeance and condemnation and revenge and holding on to grudges and bitterness. And the father in the prodigal son does none of that. Instead, he embodies the new way that Christ's resurrection and the gift of the Spirit are making possible. So rather than shunning the son, he welcomes him, he forgives him, instead of holding on to this grudge. Rather than condemning the son, he forgives him. Rather than rejecting this son and holding on to his grudge and living out of his bitterness and resentment, he's living out of something else. He somehow is able to find within his heart a capacity to be compassionate and forgiving and welcoming and loving and giving this son a second chance. And when he turns to the older son, who's still living out of the old way, he shows compassion towards him. He's inviting the older son to let go of those old ways and adopt the new ones that the Father embodies. Now, Jesus is telling this parable to the crowds and to the Pharisees who were looking down on Jesus because he's eating with tax collectors and sinners and outcasts. And they can't believe he's doing this. They can't believe that this man who's saying God's kingdom is coming is associating with all these sinners and outcasts and saying, in effect, that the kingdom is open to you. And so in the parable, we never find out if the older brother adopts the father's new way of living and enters the house and welcomes his brother. It's open-ended because Jesus is first of all speaking to the Pharisees and the crowds. Will you, he's offering them an invitation, will you let the old ways go and adopt my way, the Father's way, God's way of treating the sinner and the outcast? Can you, and this is an invitation to us, can we let go of those old ways in our families and in our friendships and adopt Jesus' new way? Can we allow the risen Jesus and his Spirit into our hearts to free us to let go of those grudges, to let go of that bitterness and resentment that tightens our hearts and makes us cold and bitter? And can we allow his Spirit to free us and open us up so that we can welcome people and say yes, to start new kinds of relationships, to be a new creation? I'll see you in the next video.